Hi, my name is Jimmy Bias. This is about Kangaroo Court. Whenever I was put on probation for 10 years, I was on probation underneath Dennis Mallet and several other parole officers. Whenever I was traveling through Texas, I got a ride from a couple guys. They gave me a ride. I was headed down to Corpus Christi, down further, maybe even further south. I was just going where it was warm. While I was riding with these two guys, because they gave me a ride from up north part of Texas, they was talking about how one was a motorcycle gang rider and he had a motorcycle, and how the other one was an escaped convict from Colorado. I can't remember exactly what these guys' names was, and the one that was escaped, although they did say his rightful name supposedly, he would always go by his fake name, and they always called the motorcycle rider Bones. Whenever we was down in Corpus Christi, they was talking with these Mexican guys, and supposedly I don't know, maybe I wasn't supposed to hear or something. They was talking about stealing a bunch of guns and a bunch of stuff and selling it across the border over into Mexico. Supposedly these are drug addicts, people who drink and do drugs. That's what they was doing constantly on the way down there. And like always, because that's all I've grown up with is people who are into drugs, and the law department always being into drugs and all that, then it didn't seem much different to me. These escaped convict and druggies, I figured, was either doing it on their own or more than likely doing it along with the government. They, I guess, some of the Mexicans, or they got thinking I was maybe going to tell on them, and so they beat me up. I was planning on getting away from them, and the next day I was getting a ride from them, and they said they was going to stop by a friend's house, and they got out and walked over to this house, and then they I guess they broke into it, although they was telling me that it was their friend. They came out and put stuff in the back of the truck, and we left. Then the police pulled us over and hauled us to jail, saying that we'd broken in. Some blonde-headed female had said yes, we was the ones who broke in. They gave us a lawyer, and of course this is why we consider it a kangaroo court. We're supposed to, you can plead innocent, you can plead guilty, but you can also have a jury trial. Of course, the lawyer had all three of us together and said this is going to work one or two ways. If you want a jury trial and want to plead innocent, no questions asked, no nothing, you are all three going to definitely get 10 years in the penitentiary. Now, obviously, how could a lawyer guarantee that? He guaranteed it. He said the court would guarantee it. He said the judge would guarantee it. The only way that could be, if you plead innocent and you have a jury trial, that they could actually sit there and guarantee that, would be to have people in the jury that they definitely are going to know are going to call you guilty no matter what. Or he said, you can all three plead guilty, and you will all three get 10 years probation. Well, the other two said yes, they would plead guilty. I just looked at them, and I just, of course, the lawyer, I asked him, well, what about whenever we get out of here? I said, I would like to stay here and get a job. And he says, I got a place where you can stay and I'll help you get a job. The day after court, he'd give me the information and we could get together, and he'd give me a place to stay and help me get a job. Well, I never did say yes, I was going to plead guilty. I planned on pleading innocent and getting a jury trial. So we sat in jail for, I think, 1 to 2 months. Of course, during that time, because I ended up getting a broken hand whenever these guys had attacked me, then I went to the doctor, but he said he wouldn't do anything for me anyway, although they're supposed to give you medical attention. So I was nursing my broken hand. Then, of course, these 2 guys was off in other cells, but then they put me in the cell with them, and they was like right in jail. They was making their own whiskey and booze, and they was smoking marijuana. They was just getting it delivered there, you know. Of course, I was scared of them. They'd already attacked me once and beat me up, saying that they thought I was going to tell on them. And of course, I figured, what good would that do? The law department doesn't do anything about those lawbreakers anyway. Plus, here you have a convicted felon escaped from a prison in Colorado, and they still wasn't doing anything about that. They had his fingerprints. They obviously could run those and check that. They obviously knew what was going on with these guys, and was behind their law breaking. So then we went to court. The judge told us we're going to be recording everything that's going on here today and typing it all up. At the end of the court hearing, if you want a copy of everything that was said today here in court, then you just come up here and ask me, and I'll give you a copy. Okay, so he asked the guys if they pleaded innocent or guilty, and they both said yes, they pleaded guilty, and I said no, I do not plead guilty. So I'm figuring, okay, I'm supposed to get a jury trial. At that time, then the court said, the judge said, you know, that the court hearing was over and that we all got 10 years probation. Well, that's not right. So I went up there and I asked him to his face. I said, I pleaded innocent. I want a copy of today's court hearing. And because I said no, I was not guilty. And he refused to give me copies of the daily court hearing, although he had just said that just whenever the trial had started. He said, go sit in that room over there, and they will get you copies. I went over there, and I sat in that room, and I sat in that room for hour after hour. They kept having people come in. I kept telling them I wanted copies of the court hearing. They kept saying they'd be right back, they'd be right back. Then they came in, and they informed me that the lawyer didn't want anything else to do with me, that they didn't want anything else to do with me, and no matter what, I was going to have to do the 10 years probation, and I had 24 hours to leave the state of Texas, and I would have to report wherever I went to different parole officers if I was going to be traveling around, although they'd prefer me just to stay in one place, and that no matter what, I was going to get the parole, and if I violated that, then automatically I'd be getting sent to prison for 10 years. Now, that is not the way the court system should be. I should have gotten my jury trial. They denied me that. Every time I went to Colorado, whenever I was in Colorado, the parole officer there refused to give me copies of the court hearing. I then went to Kansas. The Dennis Mallet was the parole officer there, I remember, and he refused to get me copies. I talked to him several times about it, and he refused to get me copies of the parole hearing. Of the 10 years, they told me I would only have to serve 5. If I did not get in trouble, I would be off in 5 years. 5 years came. I did not get in any trouble. But, of course, Dennis Mallet said, the laws have changed. You have to serve 7 years of your sentence now. Okay, so he kept changing it, and he insisted. He says, and, of course, I don't know, is this a secret file by the FBI, CIA, or whatever? They says, nothing matters in this country except for what's in your file and what we have in your file. And he, of course, refused to show me my file. He refused to get me the court hearing papers. And so that there is Kangaroo Court, law breaking by the U.S. government. Of course, the guy who was an escaped felon from Colorado, they let him out the very same time they let me out. And so, you know, they're